Sarah Chen walked into the massive council chamber like she had done hundreds of times before. The huge dome stretched above her head, filled with floating platforms where different alien species sat. Some breathed water, others floated in gas, clouds, and some stood on crystal platforms that hummed with energy. She took her seat at the human platform, a simple metal desk that looked plain next to all the fancy alien technology around her. Sarah had been Earth's voice here for 12 years. She knew every face, every species, every political game they played. Today felt different, though. The air buzzed with tension, and many aliens whispered among themselves. Sarah opened her tablet and reviewed the day's agenda. Nothing looked unusual, just standard trade discussions and territory reports. The council speaker, a tall blue creature called Vorthak Prime, called the session to order. Today we address concerns brought forward by the Zilani hegemony regarding human expansion activities. Sarah's eyebrows went up slightly. This was not on the original agenda. Councillor Kessaran from the Zilani floated forward on his platform. His tentacles moved in angry patterns as he spoke. The humans have become a problem that we can no longer ignore. Their ships move through our space without proper respect for established routes. They build colonies in systems that other species had marked for future expansion. Murmurs filled the chamber. Sarah kept her face calm, but inside she felt confused. Humans always filed proper paperwork and followed all the rules. They had been extra careful to avoid any conflicts. Furthermore, Kessaran continued, humans show dangerous emotional instability. They make decisions based on feelings rather than logic. This threatens the order we have built over thousands of years. A crystal being from the Vorthak species spoke next. Its voice sounded like wind chimes. We agree. Humans are unpredictable. They help species they have no business helping. They involve themselves in conflicts that do not concern them. This chaos-making must stop. Sarah stood up to respond, but Kessaran kept talking. We propose immediate restrictions. Human ships should only travel in designated corridors. Human colonies should be limited to systems pre-approved by this council, and human trade should be supervised by appointed council monitors. The chamber erupted in discussion. Sarah waited patiently for her turn to speak, but the counselor from the Nephrite Collective cut in. The Zilani proposal does not go far enough. Humans contribute nothing meaningful to our civilization. They are primitive newcomers who have been given too much freedom too quickly. That is not accurate, Sarah said firmly, but her voice was drowned out by other species joining the debate. A representative from the Molten Core Federation added, human emotional responses contaminate logical decision-making processes. We have documented 17 cases where human involvement led to inefficient outcomes. Sarah tried again to speak, but the council speaker ignored her raised hand. The debate continued for 2 hours. Species after species stood up to complain about humanity. They called humans reckless, primitive, emotional, and dangerous. Some of the accusations were completely false. Humans had never violated shipping routes. They had actually helped improve them. The colonies they built were all in unclaimed systems that they had surveyed and found empty. The chaos they mentioned was usually humans helping smaller species defend themselves against bullies. But no one asked for Sarah's input. No one wanted to hear the human side of the story. They had already decided that humans were the problem. Finally, the council speaker called for order. The matter is clear. We will vote on the Zilani proposal, with the additional restrictions suggested by other council members. Sarah stood up. Honored councilors, humanity requests the right to respond to these accusations, the Vorthak crystal being chimed coldly. What response is needed? The facts are obvious. Humans are disruptive. This vote will solve the problem. But many of your facts are wrong, Sarah said. If you would just look at the actual data. The data shows human emotional interference in council affairs, Kessaran interrupted. No further discussion is needed. The vote began immediately. Sarah watched in stunned silence as species after species voted yes to the restrictions. Some abstained, but none voted no. The final count was 847 in favor, with only one abstention. Nobody voted to support humanity. Not even the species that humans had helped in the past. Not even the ones who had been saved by human medical teams or defended by human ships. The motion passes, announced the council speaker. Effective immediately. Humanity will operate under the following restrictions. All human ships must use designated travel corridors and submit to inspections. All human colonies must receive council approval before establishment. All human trade must be monitored by appointed officials. These measures will remain in place indefinitely. The chamber fell silent. Every eye turned to Sarah. They expected her to argue, to plead, to get emotional like they always said humans did. Instead, Sarah quietly closed her tablet. She stood up and gathered her papers, moving slowly and carefully. The silence stretched on as she organized her materials with methodical precision. Finally, she looked up at the council speaker. Her voice was calm and clear. Humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council. Effective immediately. The words hung in the air like a physical thing. Several counselors shifted uncomfortably. This was not the reaction they had expected. Sarah continued, in the same steady tone. All human diplomatic personnel will return to Earth within 72 hours. All ongoing agreements and contracts will be honored until their natural expiration dates, but will not be renewed. Humanity thanks the Council for 30 years of membership and wishes all species well in their future endeavors. She picked up her case and walked toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed in the completely silent chamber. At the door, she paused and turned back one final time. For the record, she said quietly, humans were never the problem you needed to solve. But you will understand that soon enough. Then she walked out, leaving behind a chamber full of aliens who had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. Within minutes, the chamber erupted in confused discussion. Some counselors seemed pleased, others looked worried. A few tried to call for another vote, but it was too late. Humanity had spoken with silence, and sometimes silence was the loudest statement of all. Back on her ship, Sarah sent a simple message to Earth. Come home, all of us, now. She did not explain why, and she did not express anger. She had learned long ago that humans had something most alien species lacked, the ability to walk away with dignity intact. The Council had made their choice. Now they would live with the consequences. As her ship left the station, Sarah looked back at the massive structure that had been humanity's political home for 3 decades. It still glittered with lights and bustled with activity. But something had changed forever. The humans were no longer part of it, and deep down, Sarah suspected that the Council had just discovered what it felt like to be truly alone. The message reached every human in Council space within 6 hours. It was short and simple. Pack up, come home, no questions asked. Dr. Marcus Webb received it while working in his lab on the Zalani Research Station. He was in the middle of a breakthrough on quantum crystal growth, something that could revolutionize space travel. His alien colleagues gathered around his desk, confused by his sudden packing. You cannot leave now, said his Zalani partner Krithak. We are so close to solving the stability problem. Marcus carefully stored his personal research notes and handed over the official project files. The work belongs to the station. I'm just following orders. But this makes no sense, Krithak insisted. Why would Earth recall you over a simple council vote? Marcus looked at his partner with something like sadness. They had worked together for 3 years, but Krithak still did not understand humans. It wasn't simple, he said quietly. And it wasn't just a vote. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. On Trade Station Echo 7, Captain Lisa Rodriguez shut down the cargo distribution center that had run perfectly for 8 years. Her alien customers begged her to stay, offering better pay and working conditions. You don't understand, she explained patiently. This isn't about money. This is about respect. The Nephrite supervisor floated over in his gas cloud. What respect? The Council made a logical decision about resource allocation and security protocols. Lisa finished entering her final reports into the system. Everything was organized, all debts settled, all contracts properly terminated. Exactly, she said. Logical. No emotions involved at all. The supervisor missed the bitter tone in her voice entirely. On the frontier world of Haven 3, the entire human medical team prepared to leave. They had been providing health care to 6 different species for 4 years, solving medical problems that had stumped other doctors for centuries. The local governor, a crystal-based Vorthak, tried to convince them to stay. You cannot abandon your patients. This is not ethical behavior. Dr. Elena Vasquez finished packing the last of the medical supplies that belonged to Earth. We're not abandoning anyone. We're just returning home like your council wanted. The council restrictions were not meant to remove humans entirely, the governor protested. They were meant to provide proper oversight. Elena looked at the dozens of alien patients gathered outside the clinic. Many of them owed their lives to human medical techniques that other species had dismissed as too emotional or unscientific. Oversight, she repeated quietly. That's a nice word for it. The pattern repeated everywhere. Humans packed efficiently and left quietly. They did not argue or protest. They simply honored their existing commitments and walked away from everything else. The council had expected anger, demands, or desperate negotiations. Instead, they got polite efficiency and empty buildings. Within 48 hours, the first problems started showing up. The shipping hub at Nexus Station began experiencing delays. The automated systems still worked, but cargo started backing up in ways that had never happened before. It took the station managers 2 days to realize that humans had been quietly resolving the small scheduling conflicts that happened every day. Without human coordinators reading between the lines and making tiny adjustments, the entire system started grinding down like a machine without oil. At the Interspecies Communication Center, translation protocols began failing. The computer systems could handle basic conversations between any two species, but complex technical discussions became impossible. The humans had been serving as living bridges, understanding not just words, but concepts that other species thought about differently. When the Molten Core Federation tried to discuss plasma conduit specifications with the Crystal Confederation, their translators produced complete nonsense. Both sides blamed the other for being unclear. The Council received its first complaints within a week. "Minor technical difficulties," announced Council Speaker Vorthak Prime. "These systems will adapt to new operational parameters." But the difficulties were not minor, and they were not adapting. Trade Route 7, which connected 4 major systems, experienced its first pirate attack in 6 years. The raiders hit a Zalani freight convoy, stealing cargo worth millions of credits. The convoy had been traveling through space that everyone thought was safe. Investigation revealed that human patrol ships had been quietly sweeping the route every few days, hunting down pirate bases before they could organize major attacks. The humans had never filed official reports about this activity. They had just done it because pirates were a problem that needed solving. Councillor Kesran was furious. Why were we not informed of these patrol operations? The Council's military coordinator, an insect-like hive mind representative, buzzed nervously. Humans classified it as routine navigation security. They did not request payment or recognition. We assumed it was normal procedure for ships traveling those routes. Assumed, Kesran repeated. How many other assumptions did we make? The question hung in the air like a bad smell. Meanwhile, more complaints poured in. The mediation center on Crossroads Station shut down after the human staff left. 3 different species had been in the middle of resolving a territorial dispute, and now they were back to threatening each other with military action. The research collaboration on crystalline intelligence had completely stopped. The project required input from 5 different species, but without humans translating concepts. Between radically different ways of thinking, the alien scientists could not even agree on basic definitions. "This is temporary," insisted the Vorthak representative. "Other species can learn to perform these functions." "Which species?" asked a Nephrite counselor. "My people think in gas flow dynamics. The crystals think in harmonic resonance. The mollusk coalition thinks in chemical processes. Humans somehow understood all of us." 2 weeks after the exodus, Council Speaker Vorthak Prime called an emergency session. The chamber felt strangely empty without the human platform, even though it had been such a small presence. "The Council notes some minor disruptions following humanity's emotional departure," the speaker began. "These issues will resolve as proper procedures are implemented." But in the back of the chamber, several councillors exchanged worried looks. The disruptions were not minor, and they were getting worse every day. Councillor Vex Thran of the Hegemony stood up. "Perhaps we should send envoys to negotiate humanity's return under modified terms." The suggestion created an immediate uproar. Some species insisted that would show weakness. Others argued that practical concerns outweighed pride. The debate raged for hours, but no decision was reached. The council that had voted unanimously to restrict humanity could not agree on anything now that humans were gone. That night, as alien diplomats argued in empty hallways, cargo ships sat stranded at broken distribution centers, and research projects gathered dust in abandoned laboratories. The silence left by humanity's departure was starting to speak very loudly indeed. 6 months after humanity's withdrawal, the Galactic Council faced its first major crisis. Trade Station Echo 7, once the busiest commercial hub in Sector 12, had completely shut down operations. The problem started small. Without human coordinators, minor scheduling conflicts between different species had grown into major disputes. The crystalline traders demanded temperature-controlled docking bays. The molten core merchants needed high-heat environments. The gas dwellers required specialized atmospheric containment systems. For years, human station managers had quietly worked out compromises. They scheduled deliveries at different times, found creative solutions to environmental conflicts, and somehow kept 12 different species from killing each other over shipping schedules. Now, without those patient mediators, every small disagreement became a major incident. The crystal forms refused to share docking space with us, complained Captain Threx of the Molten Core Federation. They say our heat signatures damage their cargo. Because it does, replied the crystalline trade representative, its voice chiming like broken glass. Your thermal emissions create microfractures in our precision goods. Station manager Vexcol, a multi-tentacled nephrite, floated helplessly between them. Both species have valid concerns. Perhaps we can find a logical solution. The humans. Always found solutions, Captain Threx interrupted. Where are they now? The question hung in the recycled air like an accusation. The same week, disaster struck the Vorthak homeworlds. A plague had broken out on 3 different planets, spreading faster than anyone had ever seen. The disease attacked the crystalline matrices that made up Vorthak bodies, causing them to crack and crumble. Prime Crystal Vorthane sent urgent requests for medical assistance to every species in the Council. The responses were disappointing. The Zilani offered traditional plasma treatments that had no effect on crystal-based biology. The gas dwellers suggested atmospheric purification techniques that were useless against a disease that spread through harmonic resonance. The Molten Core physicians dealt only with metal-based life forms and had no idea how to treat crystal beings. What about the human medical protocols? Asked Secondary Crystal Hantel. They treated our people successfully during the radiation poisoning outbreak 5 years ago. Vorthane's light flickered dimly. The humans are gone. We must find another way. But there was no other way. Other species had never bothered to learn how human medicine worked. They had dismissed it as primitive and based on emotion, rather, than science. Now, watching their people die, they realized that human doctors had somehow understood biological systems in ways that pure logic could not explain. The human medical techniques had not been primitive. They had been comprehensive. Meanwhile, in the Outer Rim territories, pirate attacks had increased by 400%. What had once been safe shipping lanes were now dangerous war zones. Captain Nestar of the Zilani Defense Force studied the attack reports with growing alarm. The pirates seemed to know exactly where Council ships would be vulnerable, and they struck with coordinated precision. How did they organize so quickly? Asked his tactical officer. 6 months ago, pirate activity was almost zero in these sectors. Nestar looked at the star maps, noting the patterns of attack. It was not zero. We just never saw it. The truth was becoming clear. Human patrol ships had been quietly hunting down pirate bases for years, disrupting their operations before they could become serious threats. The humans had never asked for recognition or payment. They had simply seen a problem that needed solving, and had solved it. Without those patrols, the pirates had regrouped, rearmed, and returned with a vengeance. Sir, the tactical officer reported, we're receiving a distress call from the merchant vessel Golden Current. They're under attack in Sector 15. Nessitar checked the fleet positions. Our nearest ship is 4 hours away. Human patrols used to respond to that sector within 30 minutes, the officer noted quietly. They both watched helplessly as another red dot disappeared from their screens. The council called emergency sessions every week now, but the meetings had become exercises in frustration. Without humans serving as neutral mediators, old grudges between species were surfacing. The Zilani blamed the crystals for inefficient trade practices. The crystals accused the gas dwellers of chaotic thinking. The Molten Core representatives insulted everyone equally, while the smaller species formed defensive alliances against the larger ones. Order! Demanded Council Speaker Vorthak Prime, but his voice carried less authority than it used to. We must address these issues with logical solutions. Logic is not working, snapped Councillor Kesseron. Every problem we face requires the kind of flexible thinking that humans specialized in. The admission hung in the air like poison. For the first time, a council member had publicly acknowledged that humans might have been valuable. Perhaps, suggested a small voice from the back, we should consider inviting them back. The chamber erupted in angry debates. Some species insisted that would show weakness. Others argued that pride was less important than survival. Humans were clearly planning this withdrawal for years, accused the Nephrite representative. They deliberately made themselves indispensable and then abandoned us when we tried to impose reasonable oversight. Or, said a quiet voice from the peaceful collective delegation, they were actually indispensable, and we were too proud to admit it. The debates raged for days, but no decisions were made. The council that had once voted unanimously to restrict humanity could not agree on anything now. While they argued, the problems multiplied. First contact protocols with new species had become disasters. Without human diplomats, 3 separate encounters with previously unknown civilizations had ended in violence. The humans had possessed an unusual talent for finding common ground with completely alien minds. They had been patient where other species were impatient, creative where others were rigid, and somehow able to see patterns that pure logic missed. Now 3 promising new civilizations had declared the council to be hostile invaders and had closed their borders permanently. "We need the humans back," admitted Dr. Scrawl, the council's chief xenobiologist. "They understood something about communication that we clearly do not." "They understood emotion," said Counselor Vex Thran quietly. "We always treated that as a weakness. Maybe it was actually their greatest strength." As the months passed, more systems began to fail. The great collaborative research projects ground to a halt. Terraforming efforts stalled when different species could not agree on environmental parameters. The quantum navigation network developed glitches that no one knew how to fix. Every failure could be traced back to the same problem. Humans had been the connecting tissue that held galactic civilization together. They had bridged the gaps between radically different ways of thinking, found compromises where others saw only conflict, and somehow made the impossible machinery of interspecies cooperation actually work. Without them, the galaxy was coming apart at the seams. And somewhere in the dark between the stars, humanity was building something new. The Council just did not know it yet. 2 years after humanity's silent departure, the Galactic Council was barely recognizable. The Grand Chamber that had once hosted 849 species now held only 723. 3 major civilizations had withdrawn entirely, and dozens of smaller species had stopped sending representatives. Council Speaker Vorthak Prime stood before the diminished assembly, his crystalline form flickering with stress patterns. The agenda for today's session was depressingly familiar: trade disputes, territorial conflicts, and communication breakdowns. "First matter," he announced, "the ongoing conflict between the Zalani hegemony and the Nephrite collective over shipping rights in Sector 19. Councillor Kesron floated forward aggressively. "The gas breathers continue to contaminate our cargo routes with their atmospheric discharge. This is unacceptable." The Nephrite representative, suspended in his environmental sphere, pulsed with angry colors. "Zalani plasma drives create electromagnetic interference that disrupts our navigation systems. They are the ones causing problems." Both sides had been arguing for 6 months. The dispute had escalated from harsh words to economic sanctions to actual military skirmishes. 3 ships had been destroyed, and dozens of crew members were dead. "Perhaps a neutral mediator could resolve this conflict," suggested the representative from the peaceful collective. "Who?" asked Kessaran bitterly. "Who among us can mediate between species that think in completely different ways?" The question answered itself with silence. Everyone knew who had once served that role. "The humans would have found a solution by now," muttered the crystal representative quietly. "The humans are gone," Kessaran snapped. "We must solve our own problems." But they could not. What had once been minor disagreements now festered into permanent hostilities. The council that had maintained peace for thousands of years was watching its member species drift toward war. Dr. Thane Mortis, the council's new head of scientific cooperation, delivered his monthly report with obvious frustration. "Research productivity has declined by 67% since the human departure. The terraforming project on Kepler 442b has been abandoned. The consciousness transfer study has made no progress in 18 months. The quantum tunneling research has actually gone backward." "Explain," demanded the speaker. Dr. Mortis, a tall insectoid creature, clicked his mandibles nervously. "Humans served as conceptual translators between species with fundamentally different scientific approaches. The crystals think in harmonic mathematics. The gas dwellers understand fluid dynamics. The metal forms work with electromagnetic principles. Humans somehow bridge these different ways of understanding reality. Other species can learn to perform this function," insisted the Vorthak Prime. "We have been trying for 2 years," Dr. Mortis replied. "The crystals cannot comprehend gas-dweller physics. The metal forms find biological research incomprehensible. Each species sees only part of the puzzle. Humans saw all of it somehow." The admission was devastating. The council had built its reputation on scientific advancement through cooperation. Now that cooperation was crumbling because no one could talk to anyone else. But the worst news came from the frontier territories. Commander Zektar of the Council Defense Force delivered a report that made the entire chamber fall silent. First, Contact protocols have completely failed, he announced grimly. In the past year, we have encountered 7 new civilizations. 4 have declared us hostile invaders. 2 have gone into complete isolation. 1 launched preemptive attacks on our survey ships. This is unacceptable, said the speaker. What went wrong? Commander Zektar's antennae drooped. We followed standard procedures exactly. Initial contact via mathematical communication, demonstration of peaceful intent through gift exchange, gradual introduction of trade concepts. Those procedures worked for centuries. Those procedures were designed by humans, Zektar replied quietly. They understood something about first contact that we never learned. They could sense what different species needed to feel safe, what would frighten them, what would build trust. He activated a holographic display showing the latest disaster. The spiral arm civilization responded to our mathematical greeting by attacking immediately. They interpreted our equations as some kind of threat. A human diplomat would have found a different approach. Humans were emotional and unpredictable, protested the Nephrite counselor. How could that be better than logical procedures? Because emotions are not random, answered Dr. Yill from the Peaceful Collective. Humans understood that fear, curiosity, and hope follow patterns. They could read those patterns in species they had never met before. The truth was becoming impossible to ignore. Human emotions had not been primitive instincts. They had been sophisticated tools for understanding the motivations and needs of other beings. We need examples, demanded Kesseron. Show us exactly what humans did differently. Commander Zektar brought up another case study. 3 years ago, we encountered the singing crystals of Proxima Centauri. Our first contact team followed standard protocol. The crystals attacked immediately, destroyed 2 ships, and disappeared into deep space. I remember, said the speaker. A complete failure. But 6 months later, a human exploration ship encountered the same species. They made peaceful contact within hours and established a thriving trade relationship. How? The humans realized that the crystals communicated through musical harmony. Our mathematical signals sounded like screaming noise to them. The humans responded with music instead of math. The chamber buzzed with uncomfortable discussions. Species that had dismissed human methods as unscientific were beginning to understand what they had lost. There is more, Zektar continued. The void dwellers near the galactic rim, the phase shifters of the Andromeda approach, the silicon mines of the neutron star cluster. All peaceful relationships established by human diplomats using methods that we never understood. What methods? Asked the speaker desperately. Patience, creativity, the ability to see situations from completely different perspectives, the willingness to abandon logic when logic did not work. The final blow came from the Economic Council. Trade between council species had dropped by 45%. Without human shipping coordinators, cargo routes had become inefficient. Without human mediators, minor disputes escalated into trade wars. Without human innovation, new markets remained undeveloped. The galaxy is becoming smaller, reported Chief Economic Analyst Vordan. Species are retreating into isolation rather than risk. Misunderstandings that lead to conflict. As the session ended, Council Speaker Vorthak Prime made a decision that would have been unthinkable 2 years earlier. Prepare a formal invitation for humanity's return to the Council, full membership, expanded rights, and guaranteed representation on all major committees. Some councilors protested, but their voices lacked conviction. Everyone knew the truth now. The Council had not removed a problematic member. They had torn out the heart of galactic civilization. The only question was whether humanity would care enough to come back. Unknown to the Council, human ships were already exploring regions of space that the advanced galactic civilizations had deemed too dangerous to approach. They were finding new friends, building new alliances, and discovering that the universe was much larger and more interesting than anyone had imagined. The galaxy beyond Council space was calling, and humanity was answering with enthusiasm. Some bridges once burned could never be rebuilt. The Council was about to learn that lesson the hard way. 5 years after humanity's withdrawal, the largest diplomatic mission in Council history approached Earth's solar system. 50 ships from 43 different species traveled together, carrying the most generous offer ever extended to any. Civilization.Council Speaker Vorthak Prime led the delegation personally. His crystalline form had grown dimmer over the years, stress patterns flickering constantly through his structure. Beside him floated Councillor Kesseron, the Zalani who had started the conflict that drove humanity away. Sensors detect massive activity throughout the system, reported the navigation officer. Hundreds of ships, construction platforms, and what appear to be orbital habitats. Kesseron studied the readings with surprise. This level of development should not be possible. Humans had limited resources when they left. Perhaps we underestimated their capabilities, the speaker replied quietly. As they approached Earth, the scope of human achievement became clear. The solar system buzzed with activity that dwarfed anything in Council space. Massive shipyards orbited Jupiter, their construction bays filled with vessels of unknown design. Mining operations stretched from Mercury to the asteroid belt. And the ships. There were thousands of them, sleek and purposeful, unlike anything the Council had ever seen. A communication came from Earth Traffic Control. Welcome to the Sol System Council delegation. You are cleared for orbital approach to Earth Station Alpha. Please maintain course and speed for escort assignment. 3 ships moved to flank the Council fleet. They were clearly human in design, but their technology seemed decades ahead of what humanity had possessed 5 years ago. How did they advance so quickly? Wondered Dr. Thane Mortis. The answer came as they docked at Earth Station Alpha. The station was enormous, easily 3 times the size of the Council's largest facility. But what drew attention were the other ships docked there, vessels that clearly belonged to species the Council had never seen before. A tall woman in a simple blue uniform met them at the airlock. She looked familiar to Kesseron, though he could not place her at first. I am Admiral Sarah Chen, she said with a polite smile. I have been asked to escort you to the meeting with our diplomatic corps. Kesseran's tentacles twitched in recognition. This was the same human who had walked out of the Council chamber 5 years ago, but she looked different, confident in a way that had nothing to do with politics or position. As they walked through the station corridors, the Council delegates saw wonders they had never imagined. Gardens that grew in impossible spirals, gravity, fields that shifted and flowed, and beings that seemed to be made of pure energy walking alongside humans as equals. Who are these other species? Asked the speaker. Friends, Sarah replied simply. Allies, partners. We have made many new connections since leaving the Council. They entered a vast conference room where more surprises waited. A dozen humans sat at a curved table, but they were joined by beings the Council had never encountered. Crystalline entities that sang in harmonious voices, gas cloud creatures that pulsed with internal light, and metallic beings whose bodies shifted and flowed like liquid. These are the founding members of the Galactic Cooperative, explained Dr. Elena Vasquez, the former medical officer who had left Haven 3. We represent 47 different species across 3 galaxies. 3 galaxies? Kesseran sputtered. That is impossible. Intergalactic travel requires technologies that do not exist. A being made of flowing starlight spoke in a voice like singing crystals. Your Council believed many things were impossible. Humans showed us otherwise. The Council speaker activated his translation device and cleared his throat. Honored humans, the Galactic Council comes before you with humble recognition of past errors. We offer full restoration of membership, expanded territorial rights, and a permanent position on our ruling body. Sarah listened with the same polite attention she had shown years before. When the speaker finished his prepared speech, she nodded thoughtfully. Thank you for the generous offer. We appreciate the gesture. Then you accept? Kesseran asked eagerly. I'm afraid not, Sarah replied gently. Humanity must respectfully decline. The Council delegates exchanged shocked looks. They had been prepared for negotiations, demands, even anger. But simple refusal had not occurred to them. Perhaps we could discuss terms, the speaker tried again. Expanded voting rights, reduced restrictions, territorial guarantees. You misunderstand, interrupted Dr. Vasquez. This is not about terms or conditions. We have simply moved beyond the need for Council membership. Sarah activated a holographic display that showed star maps beyond the Council's wildest imagination. While the Council spent 5 years trying to repair what we left behind, humanity has been exploring regions you never knew existed. We have encountered civilizations that make the Council look like a small neighborhood committee. The display showed thriving trade routes spanning multiple galaxy clusters, research stations studying phenomena that Council science had never imagined, and diplomatic relationships with beings so advanced that their technology seemed like magic. The eternal machines of the Magellanic clouds, Sarah continued, taught us how to fold space itself. The energy dancers of the void showed us how to communicate with stars. The time weavers of the far rim introduced us to civilizations that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. But how? Demanded Dr. Mortis. How did you find these species? How did you establish contact? A new voice answered from the back of the room. Because we listen. The speaker was an elderly human man the delegates did not recognize. His hair was white, his face lined with years, but his eyes held depths of understanding that seemed almost alien. "I am Dr. James Harrison," he said, "former head of Council Xenobiology Research. The Council always approached new species with predetermined protocols and fixed expectations. Humans learn to approach each encounter with empty hands and open minds." Sarah nodded. "Every species we have met required a different approach. The quantum jellies communicate through probability fluctuations. The living worlds speak in geological time scales. The fractal intelligence exists in mathematical spaces that most minds cannot comprehend. But we learned to listen to all of them," Dr. Harrison continued. "We developed empathy as a technology, creativity as a science, and patience as a weapon against the impossible." The council delegation sat in stunned silence. The humans were describing achievements that sounded like fantasy, but the evidence surrounded them. The station itself was proof that humanity had found partners and technologies beyond council imagination. "What about Earth?" asked the speaker desperately. "What about humanity's homeworld?" Sarah smiled, and for the first time, it seemed genuinely warm. "Earth is more beautiful than ever. We have healed the damage from our industrial period, restored the climate, and learned to live in harmony with our biosphere. Our population is healthier, happier, and more creative than ever before." "But you could have so much more as council members," Kesseron protested. "Established trade routes, proven technologies, the security of belonging to a great civilization." "The council is not great," Sarah said quietly. "It is small." The words hung in the air like a physical blow. "Your council represents less than 1% of the galaxy," Dr. Vasquez continued. "And that galaxy is less than 1/1,000,000th of the universe. Humanity has work to do on a scale you cannot imagine." As if summoned by her words, the view screens around the room lit up with images of human ships departing Earth. Dozens of them, heading out into the dark between stars with the confidence of a species that had found its purpose. "Where are they? Going?" whispered the speaker. "Everywhere," Sarah replied. "The Void Dancer Collective has invited us to explore dimensions where space and time flow backward. The Machine Empire wants our help in understanding biological consciousness. The Star Shepherds have asked us to assist in the construction of new galaxies." "New galaxies?" "The universe is stranger and more wonderful than the Council ever dreamed," Dr. Harrison said. "And humanity has barely begun to explore it." The Council delegation departed 3 hours later, their mission a complete failure. As their ships left Earth's orbit, they passed hundreds of human vessels heading in the opposite direction, carrying explorers and diplomats and dreamers toward destinations that the Council's most advanced computers could not even calculate. Back, in the conference room, Sarah stood alone at the great windows, watching the council ships disappear into the distance. Dr. Vasquez joined her. "Do you think they understand yet?" "Some of them do," Sarah replied. "Others never will. The council taught them to think small, to play it safe, to believe that civilization meant staying in one place and following the same rules forever. And we taught ourselves to think big. We taught ourselves to think free. Outside the window, another wave of human ships departed for destinations unknown, carrying with them the dreams of a species that had learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes walking away was not an ending. Sometimes it was the beginning of everything.